why there is the requirement of the respiratory system in the organisms. Most of the organisms have aerobic respiration, because in the comparison, if we go for an analysis, majority of the organisms they are having aerobic respiration, for which the supply of the oxygen is must. So in simple organisms like unicellular organisms and insects, moths, oxygen enters in the body, and carbon dioxide is expelled from the body by diffusion process, simple diffusion. But in complex organism, the gaseous exchange is not enough to carry oxygen to every cell. For example, in case of human beings, if we go and consider this diffusion process to supply the oxygen, then we will find that it takes about 3 years to reach to the by this oxygen, by the process of diffusion. This oxygen gas from the lungs will take 3 years to reach in the cells of the toe of the leg, and it is not sufficient, because waiting for the supply of the oxygen for 3 years, it is not feasible. The life will not survive. It needs immediately, in the fraction of the seconds, the oxygen should be supplied to every cell. So to ensure this supply of the oxygen to every cell very quickly, it is ensured with the well developed advanced respiratory system. So this is why the advanced respiratory system is essential for the oxygen supply and dispose of the carbon dioxide which is produced in every cell due to the oxidation of the food. So here these are few examples of the respiratory organs of the various organisms. The respiratory organs developed for the breathing in the terrestrial organisms like reptiles, birds and mammals are lungs. Those animals or those organisms which are living, which have their inhabitat on the land, directly or indirectly, like the bird they always not keep flying in the sky, they rest on the tree, in their nests on the tree or on the land. So they are directly, if not directly, they are indirectly on the land. But the animals like us and cattle and the other mammalians, buffalo, cows, they all are on the ground. So those which are on the terrestrial part, for those organisms which are terrestrial like reptile, birds and mammals, the respiratory organs are lungs. See here in the picture, the lungs are like this. It is the example, it is the picture of the human respiratory system. The human lungs are these. The fundamental structure is the same, but as per the morphology and anatomy of the organism, the shape and structure of this lung may vary in shape, size, but the function is the same. Now in case of aquatic organisms, the aquatic organisms are those which are which inhabit in water bodies like the fish and others. They live in water and they take oxygen dissolved in water, and they take this dissolved oxygen in their blood and release the carbon dioxide of their blood into water by the help of the gills. Take example of this, it is a fish, and fish is an aquatic organism and it has a system, it is system gills. These gills, these are the organs, respiratory organs in aquatic organisms. These are rich in supply of the blood cells, blood vessels. These are arteries or here these capillaries. These are rich in blood, and whenever the water which is rich in oxygen, it passes through these gills, then due to the diffusion, the concentration of the oxygen in the water is more than the oxygen in the blood of the aquatic animals. So the oxygen, it diffuses in the blood, diffuses in the blood of the aquatic animals, and similarly the carbon dioxide which is rich, which is more in concentration and having more partial pressure in the blood of the aquatic animals, it diffuses out in the water. So this is the way, this is how the intake of oxygen and expel of the carbon dioxide from the blood into the water takes place in aquatic animals. Similar There's in case of the pests like the insects, there is a spherical and tracheal system. See here, take notice, it's a bluish in color, like the stomata on the leaf. In case of the plants, the stomata, these are the microscopic holes which are present underneath the leaves, and they are meant for the gaseous exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen in the plants. Similarly, in case of the insects, they are found very microscopic holes on the body of the insects. These microscopic holes, these are called spiracles, and they are connected with a pipe. This is known as trachea, and this trachea, it ensures the supply of the oxygen to every cell of the insect to carry the oxidation of the food, and it also ensures the to collect carbon dioxide from the cells and then pass it out through spiracle into the atmosphere. So these are the few examples that different type of the organisms, they have different type of the respiratory organs in them. Again I summarize once more. In case of the terrestrial animals, they are lungs, and in aquatic animals they are gills, and in insects there is a spiracle and trachea system. But in case of amphibians are those organisms which can live both on land and water. Like take example of this frog. Frog can live on the land, and it can as well live in water. So nature has blessed them with such a system that whenever they are on the land, they respire with the help of the lungs, and when they are present in water, they respire with the help of their skin. Their skin has so developed that causes the exchange of the carbon dioxide and oxygen in the water, and they take dissolved oxygen, like that of the aquatic. Other rest I explained. See, it is a frog, an example of amphibian. The pinkish color shown here in this picture represents the lung, and whenever it is on the land, it respires, it takes oxygen with these lungs, and when it is present in water, cuticle respiration, cuticle means by the help of its skin, it respires. So this is the special case in case of amphibians. Now we talk about the human respiratory system. The human respiratory system is a very highly developed respiratory system, and it's a complex. Why it is called complex? Because it is constituted of the number of the parts. The first is nostril, then the nasal cavity, then respiratory tract, then trachea, then lungs. Trachea, it enters into the lungs, and we will study in detail further on. Because of these different parts, different components, the system is said complex. So human beings have well developed and complex respiratory system. So far nostrils are concerned, these are the holes which are present or located in the anterior part of the nose. You know, take example of your own nose. There are two holes on the anterior part of your nose. These are the nostrils, meant for the entry of the oxygen in the respiratory system and exhale or expel of the carbon dioxide from it. You know, we take oxygen when we take it through nostrils, and we then release carbon dioxide through the nostrils. So nostrils are not just nothing, these are the simple hole at the anterior part of the nose. Now the nasal cavity, as I said, the cavity is the hollow part. It's a hollow part. It is situated on the back of the nostrils, and from the nostrils air enter into the nasal cavity of the body, and the fine hair, they are present many fine hair in nasal cavity which acts as the filter of the air. They ensure not to let any dust particle and other harmful substance to go into the lungs, into respiratory tract any further, because these are all blocked here in the microscopic hairs present. Along with these microscopic hairs which acts as filter, there is also present mucus. This mucus layer present in the nasal cavity, it also further ensure to let these dust particles and other harmful substances to not to go in the respiratory tract any further. They hold, they act as the filter. They act as a filter, because you know what is mucus? It is some like viscous substance, sticky in nature. Sometimes when your nose blows, when you catch cold, then viscous liquid, some watery or sometimes it is milky in color, it is viscous. This is mucus. And the cavity also optimizes the air temperature. Air temperature means when it is too cold air, then the nasal cavity is rich in blood supply. It contains very rich supply of the blood, and because we human beings are the warm blooded animals, the body temperature is fixed for a normal human, healthy human being. It is 37 degrees Celsius. The temperature of the blood is 37. So when the very cold air it passes through the nasal cavity, then the temperature, because of the temperature of the blood vessels, it is optimized. It is so optimized that cause no harm when inhaled in the lungs. Similar is the case when the air we inhale is very hot, then it is cooled down in the nasal cavity. This is why we are suggested to inhale through nose instead of through mouth, because everybody knows it is a very common phenomena. We can breathe both with the help of the nose and with the help of the mouth. See here, take a look of this picture here. It is again I forgot to translate into English. It is the nostril here, and behind this nostril it is nasal cavity, which is written here Nasadwar. It is the nasal cavity, and it is Mukh Guha, the buccal cavity, and both this nasal cavity here and this buccal cavity, they have the common opening. They both commonly open into one tube, and then it is larynx here, the sound box of the human beings. When we exhale the air from the lungs, it passes through vocal cords, and these vocal cords present in the larynx, they produce sound. It is not the topic, we will discuss later on in the next videos. And now next to this, these are the, see here, below this larynx it is trachea here. The reddish portion, it is very skinny, and outside this trachea there are present cartilages. These cream colored portion, it is these are the cartilages. These are the cartilages, because like that tube, you must be using your hand shower pipe. Hand shower pipe, it is containing a rubber tube wrapped with the steel tube of which is formed in the of the rings. It's a very flexible, and similar is the case here. This nasal cavity, it leads to trachea. Trachea is the next part associated with the nasa guha, or say nasal cavity. It is a small structure, and there are C-shaped cartilages rings in the throat that protects the trachea from being from being collapsed. Because these cartilages which are present, you know, put the finger at your neck and gently press them, and you will notice some hard structure. These are the cartilages which are as the protective structure outside this soft trachea. Because if without these, there is a possibility that this trachea can collapse. So to avoid that, the nature has blessed us with these cartilages, provide the strength to this trachea. Now this trachea further divide into two parts, the right bronchus and the left bronchus. The right bronchus enters into the right lung, and the left bronchus enter into the left lung. Now upon entering into the lungs, the bronchus divide into small branches. These small fine branches are called bronchioles, and these are further divided into micro branches. And we take these, say here, this bronchi means right bronchus and the left bronchus, they are in a single word are called bronchi in a plural sense. The bronchi, these are the primary branches of the trachea. These are two in number, one which enters into the right lung and one second which enter into the left lung. So there are two bronchi, left and right. These bronchi are called primary branch. Then these bronchi, when they enter into the lungs, they further divide into the small branches, and these small branches are called bronchiole or the secondary bronchi. And these secondary bronchi, they further divide into still small branches. Small means narrow in diameter. These are called the tertiary bronchi, and eventually these tertiary bronchi, they enter into interlocked balloon-like structure, and these interlocked balloon-like structure are called alveoli. Let I see you here. These, take example of this. It is trachea shown in red, and these white spots in this white. It represents the cartilages to provide the strength to this trachea, so that it cannot collapse. Now it divides into two parts: primary bronchi, left and right, left bronchus and the right bronchus. Then see here, this bronchus, it further divides into the, it enters, a single tube enters into the lungs. Then in the lungs, this bronchus, it divides further into small branches. These are called secondary. Secondary bronchi, means bronchioles. These further divide. These bronchioles, these further divide into still fine branches, means branches with the narrow diameter. These are called tertiary bronchi. These tertiary bronchi, these are the, finally they enter into some balloon-like structure. See here in this picture. In this picture, you see it is the finest, the tertiary bronchi. It ends into a balloon-shaped structure. These balloon-shaped structure are called alveoli, and the singular form is alveolus, and the plural is alveoli. And in the alveoli, these microtubes, means the tertiary branches, they further penetrate into small balloon-like intermost structure. These balloon-like intermost structure are called alveoli. Alveoli provides a surface for the exchange of the gases. There is a wide net for the blood vessels in their walls, and in respiration, the oxygen is exchanged with from the surface of alveoli and transported to every cell of the body through blood in the which are present in these vessels, which are present in alveoli. See how it takes place, because the oxygen which we inhale in the lungs, it is rich in oxygen, while the air which is present in blood, on the other hand, the blood which is present in the blood vessels in alveoli, these are the blood vessels shown here in blue and red. The red, these blue vessels, these are containing carbon dioxide rich blood, and when the blood from these vessels, it enters, it rich in alveoli, the concentration of the air in alveoli which we take which we inhale is rich in oxygen. So oxygen diffuses in blood, and the oxygen when enters into the blood becomes oxygenated, and then the carbon dioxide from the blood is released in the alveoli sac. Let I explain you here. See, it is here. The capillary, this blue color, it is the blood which is coming from the tissue, means from the cells. It collects carbon dioxide gas from all the cells, and this is because of carbon dioxide is shown here in the blue color. Then this carbon dioxide, which is present in more concentration, it diffuses in the alveoli. It diffuses in the alveoli, and the air which was inhaled from atmosphere through nostril, it is rich in oxygen. So oxygen from alveoli enters into the blood. So this carbonated blood or deoxygenated blood, it is oxygenated here, and now the oxygen rich blood, it again taken by these blood vessels to the every cell of the tissue of the body of the organism. Now see here, these alveoli, they ensure proper and very timely and very quick exchange of the carbon dioxide and oxygen, because they are such a wide in if they are stressed, they can have an area of up to 80 square meter, because the very small structure which are present in our thoracic cavity, in case of human beings, they are appear to be confined to a particular small area, but if they are flattened and are stressed, then they can occupy an area of 80 square meter. Such a wide area, it is sufficient enough to for the oxygen to be transported in the various tissue by respiratory pigment called hemoglobin, because it is hemoglobin which has the capacity to bind with oxygen, and it takes oxygen in the form of oxygenated hemoglobin, and then it releases this oxygen in the tissue where it is used in respiration, and the carbon dioxide is formed. Then the blood, it takes the carbon dioxide back to alveoli. The exchange of the gases takes place in alveoli between the atmospheric air and the blood which is present in the blood vessels in the alveoli. Now the gaseous exchange takes place on the principle of the concentration of the gases, as I explained already, because the concentration of the oxygen in the alveoli is more, so this oxygen is diffused in the blood present in the blood vessels in alveoli, and the carbon dioxide gas which is present in more concentration in blood, it is diffused in the alveoli. So gaseous exchange takes place physically here, because the partial vapor pressure of carbon dioxide is more, because of the more partial pressure, it is released in the alveoli, and the partial pressure of oxygen is more in alveoli, and so this oxygen is supplied, it is diffused in the blood. So breathing, now we explain about the breathing. Breathing is an autonomous process. Autonomous means which takes place automatically without your intention, and you cannot control it. It goes on. When you are sleeping, when you are insane, breathing carry on, and this is why it is said autonomous. When we inhale, our ribs rise upwards, because in the thoracic cavity, the internal organs are protected by very protective structure called these ribs. These ribs, they are provided with certain muscles. When these muscles they contract, then these ribs, and along with these ribs, there is also a diaphragm, a bladder, a very flexible membrane-like structure which differentiate this thoracic cavity and the abdominal cavity. Means it is present at the borderline of the thoracic cavity and the abdominal cavity. So when the muscle of the ribs they contract, then the diaphragm, it is flattened and shrink, and the ribs they rise up. As a result of this, the volume of the thoracic cavity increases, and you must be knowing that when the volume increases, the pressure decreases, because the pressure and the volume, they are inversely proportional to each other. Whenever there is a decrease in the volume, the pressure increases, and whenever there is an increase in the pressure, the volume decreases. They are inversely proportional to each other. Therefore, the atmospheric pressure is more because when the thoracic cavity expands, the volume increases, so the pressure inside the thoracic cavity is less. This is why the air from outside, it is with force, it enters into the lungs automatically due to external pressure being more. When the muscle they expand, when they relax, then the ribs they come inward and the diaphragm moves up to its former position, as a result of which the the volume of the thoracic cavity decreases and the air pressure increases, just because it is the very basic principle that the gases from the region of higher pressure, they flow from the region of higher pressure to lower pressure, because due to the contraction, due to decrease in the thoracic volume, the pressure increases in the thoracic cavity, so this air is expelled out. Take example of this by the diagram, it is very convenient to understand. In inhalation, it is here inhalation process. See, in this plus mark indicates the atmospheric pressure is more and the pressure inside this lungs is less. Negative indicates means less in pressure. So at the time of inhalation, the thoracic cavity, take a comparative look of these two. This structure particular, it denotes this diagram, it represents the thoracic volume of the thoracic cavity. In the case of inhalation, the volume is more, means due to, because the ribs they are rising upward and the diaphragm is flattened downward. And see here, at the time of exhalation, the diaphragm is upward and the ribs they are moved, they move inward, as a result of the volume of the thoracic cavity is less. So when the volume is less, the pressure increases, means this plus indicate the pressure of the gases. The pressure inside now the lungs is more, so negative means less pressure, so the air from the lungs, it is expelled out. So it goes on without any break, inhalation and exhalation, because the muscles in the ribs they keep going contracting and relaxing, relaxing. So this continues the intake of the oxygen and expel of the carbon dioxide. So this is how the breathing takes place in the human beings. So now the next topic, oxygen and carbon dioxide gas exchange in the cells or in the tissue. Because the gaseous exchange of the carbon dioxide and oxygen, it takes place at two levels. First level is in between air which is present in alveoli and the blood. At the first phase, A here, we oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange in the two stages. First stage is in between the atmospheric air in the alveoli and the blood, present in the blood vessels in the alveoli. In C, the concentration of oxygen in the air reaching the alveoli in the lungs is high and low for carbon dioxide, whereas the blood vessel of the alveoli have high concentration of the carbon dioxide and the concentration of oxygen is low. Therefore, according to the principle of diffusion, oxygen from the alveoli enters into the blood and the carbon dioxide gas diffuses from the blood into the alveoli, and at the same time, due to decreasing the volume of the thoracic cavity, the air pressure increases in the lungs, so the carbon dioxide which is diffused from the blood into the alveoli, it through the trachea and then the nasal cavity and then through nostril, it is expelled out. The carbon dioxide rich air is expelled out. Now the another gaseous exchange at the second level, in between the blood and the cells, in between the blood. On the other hand, when the oxygen rich blood reaches the cells in the tissue, the oxygen diffuses from the blood into the cells according to the principle of diffusion, because the concentration of oxygen in the blood is more while the concentration of the oxygen is low in the cell, because the oxygen is consumed constantly regularly by the process of respiration, means the oxidation of the food. So the volume, so the concentration of oxygen is less in cell, so the oxygen it diffuses in the cell. On the at the same time, the carbon dioxide which is formed by the oxidation of the oxygen of the food, this concentration of carbon dioxide in the cell is more, but the concentration of the carbon dioxide in the blood is less. So from the carbon dioxide gas from the cell, it is diffused into the blood vessels. Thus the gaseous exchange it takes place twice in the in case of human beings and other animals having this type of the respiration. First in between the atmospheric air in the alveoli and the blood, and second exchange at at tissue level in between the blood and the cells. So and for this energy, which is the energy produced here in the oxidation, is converted into ATP. Now the principle of diffusion are the same whether it is a case of the simple animal or the plant or whatever, and there is respiration in the plant for which the necessary gaseous exchange is done by the stomata, and the large intercellular space they ensure all the cells to be exposed with the air. Means like the human beings, the gaseous exchange, the intake of oxygen and release of carbon dioxide, it also takes place in case of plants. They take oxygen through stomata. See, it is the matter to understand briefly. It is interesting to know interesting gas exchange system in plants. Plant perform photosynthesis during daytime. Photosynthesis is a process. Photosynthesis is a process in which the glucose is formed from carbon dioxide and water molecules in the presence of sunlight and with the help of the chlorophyll. So the carbon dioxide produced as a result of respiration is used up in photosynthesis. So there is no release of carbon dioxide at all during the daytime, and the release of oxygen is the main event at the daytime, while there is no photosynthesis activity at the night time in the plants, because when plant respire at night, the plant expel carbon dioxide at night and intake oxygen. It is interesting to know, because we have an opinion that the plants they always release oxygen in atmosphere. Not at all it is so, but amount of the carbon dioxide taken from atmosphere is comparatively more and the oxygen released, because the one of the byproduct of photosynthesis is oxygen along with the glucose, which is converted into starch in the plants. This oxygen it is released by the plants through stomata, but because the respiration is also taken, because for the energy requirement to perform different activities, the plants also need energy, and this energy it also generates through oxidation of the food. So it is the same with the plants. They also take carbon dioxide and they also take oxygen for respiration and release carbon dioxide, but because of this photosynthesis, the carbon dioxide formed during respiration is used up in the daytime. So it is interesting to know. And now there is a comparative study of the respiration and efforts taken for the intake of oxygen in the terrestrial organisms and the aquatic organisms. It is said here that terrestrial organisms are more beneficial than an aquatic organism towards obtaining oxygen from respiration, means external respiration. See, aquatic organisms they take oxygen dissolved in water by gills or column, because the amount of the soluble oxygen in water is much less than the amount of the oxygen in air. So the breathing rate in aquatic organism is faster than the breathing rate of the terrestrial organisms. Like that, we human beings we breathe, the breathing rate is very slow in us in the comparison of the aquatic animals, because they breathe very fast to ensure the intake of the sufficient oxygen for their survival. These are the gills which I have already studied. Now during the breathing cycle, when the air is in and out, the lungs always have a residual volume of air which gives enough time for the intake of the oxygen and removal of the carbon dioxide. Means when we exhale, then the lungs, they are not completely emptied. A certain amount of the gas, it remains inside the lungs, so that these may not collapse. And they also ensure this exchange of the gases properly, the intake of oxygen and exhalation of the carbon dioxide. This amount of the oxygen, air which already remains after exhalation in the lungs, it is known as residual volume. In this way, the cycle of respiration is completed with the help of the respiratory system, and the process goes on continuously throughout the life, and the day it stops the life. So it is all for the day, and we have already studied entirely and in depth of the respiratory system. We'll be back with the next video having next life process, the transportation, in the next video to be uploaded. So before you leave the YouTube channel Atri Academy, I request you all the viewers to please subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon, so that whenever any new video is uploaded, you can get the notification and do not miss to watch the video. Have a great studies. Goodbye. Take care.